Right then, hello, welcome back to another Game Week Predictions video. As we normally do, we're just going to jump straight in, have a look how we did in Game Week 29, and then we'll jump over to Game Week 30, the upcoming game week, and see if we can get any matches right. Now, we did a bit better last week, as we actually predicted one match correct. Let's go! So now we have the professional glasses on, we can now talk about last week. So we're going to start with Saturday, and Manchester City versus Liverpool. Now, this was the early kickoff. I predicted 2-1 to Manchester City. It's actually 4-1. And Manchester City came from behind to batter Liverpool. Salah opened the scoring at the Etihad. Alvarez was there to level before the second half. Then in the second half, City just ran riot, absolutely destroying Liverpool. Even without Haaland, they looked like a very threatening side. And arguably played some better football. But yeah, Liverpool just could not hold on in that second half. And then we move on to Bournemouth versus Fulham. I predicted 1-0 to Fulham. It was actually 2-1 to Bournemouth, and this was a huge win for the Cherries. I don't think anyone actually saw this result coming either. But yeah, as I said, it's a massive point for Bournemouth, and a big blow to Fulham's European hopes as saw them slide down the table, whereas Bournemouth, they edged closer to just getting out of the relegation zone. So yeah, very unexpected. And then move on to Nottingham Forest versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. I predicted 1-0 to Forest. It was 1-0. Forest started off strong and were the better side throughout this match. They played very well to score the opener and kept Wolves fairly quiet. However, Wolves did manage to salvage a point with their only shot on target. Forest spurned many chances to make it 2-0, which is very unfortunate, and we paid the price. And then move on to Crystal Palace versus Leicester City. And I predicted 1-0 to Leicester. It's actually 2-1 to Palace. And Roy is back. And Palace suddenly know how to score goals again, which I did not see coming. It was a 94th minute strike from Philippe Mateta that sealed the victory for Roy, and a huge boost for Palace. And it also saw Rodgers part company with the Foxes, which, to be honest, was a long time coming. Then move on to Arsenal versus Leeds United. I predicted 3-0 to Arsenal. It was actually 4-1. Arsenal continued to sit at the top of the table. They saw off this Leeds side fairly comfortably. It was a Jesus brace, as well as goals from Ben White and Xhaka, that sealed the 3 points for the Londoners. And then move on to Brighton versus Brentford. I predicted 3-1 to Brighton. It was actually 3-0, and the Seagulls had to come from behind 3 times to ensure that they got something from this clash, which, honestly, I did not see coming. But Brighton versus Brentford is always a good clash, so I should have thought it'd be more goals than just 4. The scoreline does make this match seem tighter than it was, as Brighton had 33 shots to Brentford's 7, which is kind of mad if you think about it. Then move on to Chelsea versus Aston Villa. I predicted 2-1 to Villa. It's actually 2-0. Chelsea, once again, did not look great, as Aston Villa saw off Chelsea in their own backyard. Quite embarrassing. It was another defeat at home that saw Potter get the sack from Chelsea, and it was just a brilliant win for Villa. They're a very dominant side at the moment. They're playing some very good football, and to think where they were when Emery came in is just crazy to see where they are now. I think they're in 7th, which is an insane turnaround. Then move on to Sunday's fixtures, and we start with West Ham United versus Southampton. I predicted 2-2 draw. It's actually 1-0 to West Ham. Now this is a very big result for the Hammers, as they jumped out of the relegation zone with this match. The Saints put up a valiant effort, but ultimately could not break down West Ham. And yeah, brilliant point for West Ham, as they look to survive in the Premier League and look for Moyes to keep his job, which at the moment he has. Then move on to Newcastle United versus Manchester United. I predicted 2-1 to Manchester United. It's actually 2-0 to Newcastle, and Manchester United absolutely fell apart at St James's Park, as Newcastle were the dominant side throughout the match. It was to be expected with Casemiro out, but this was more of a defeat than I really could see coming. I thought Newcastle would score, but I didn't think they'd be as dominant as they were, so fair play to Eddie Howe's boys. And then move on to Everton versus Tottenham. I predicted 1-0, and it was 1-0. This is the one we got right. Let's go! So Spurs continue to prove contest point as they drop points in Merseyside. Everton put up a great display and fully deserved the point. Each team saw red too, which was very interesting, but that strike from Keane, man. What a goal. Then we on to Tuesday's fixtures, and we start off with Leeds United versus Nottingham Forest. I predicted a 1-0 draw. It's actually 2-1, and this is a very huge 3 points for Leeds as they came back from behind to beat a lacklustre Forest side. Forest did go ahead through Mangala, and what a brilliant goal that was from him. But 8 minutes later, Harrison equalised, and then Sinistera scored this worldie. Very going for us Forest fans though, because we actually looked decent to start with, and then just all fell apart. And then move on to Bournemouth versus Brighton Hove Albion. I predicted 3-1 to Brighton. It was actually 2-0. Brighton continued their unbeaten run within a very assured win. That Irish talent Evan Ferguson opened the scoring with Enciso sealing it in the 91st minute. Ferguson, man, what a player he's been this season. It's actually crazy. A very, very good talent for Ireland. Then move on to Leicester City versus Aston Villa. Now I predicted 2-0 to Villa. It was actually 2-1. And Villa once again took all 3 points back to Birmingham. And it was courtesy of a Traore screamer. Watkins was amongst the goals yet again as he opened the scoring for Villa, but Barnes managed to equalise for Leicester. Then Traore's screamer happened, and the rest is history. Then move on to Chelsea versus Liverpool. I predicted 2-1 to Liverpool. It was actually a 0-0 draw, and El Shitico ended in a draw as neither side could score a goal. Well, Chelsea managed, twice, but VAR said otherwise. Neither team were really great in this match, and that kind of sums up both their seasons anyway. It was just a boring match, to be honest. And then move on to Wednesday's fixtures, and we start with West Ham United versus Newcastle United. I predicted 3-1 to Newcastle. It was actually 5-1. It was an absolute toon domination job in London. Newcastle attacked West Ham from the offset, and it paid dividends as Callum Wilson opened the scoring within 6 minutes. Zuma would pull one back when he mistook the ball for a cap, but Newcastle were never really pressured by this lacklustre West Ham side. I did not expect that at all. And finally, Manchester United versus Brentford. I predicted 2-1 for Manchester United. It's actually 1-0. And there was only a goal from Rashford that separated the two sides in Manchester. United controlled the game for the most part, despite missing huge players like Casemiro and Eriksen. And Brentford did have their fair few chances, but United just managed to keep them at bay and seal all 3 points, which are vital for their European challenge. So that was me looking back at my Game Week 29 predictions. We only got one right, which is better than we've done in the last couple of weeks, so I'll take it. Thank you, Sean Dyche. But yeah, let's look at Game Week 30, and hopefully we can get 2 correct. Okay, let's get down to the meat and potatoes of the video, the Game Week 30 predictions that you're all here for. Yeah, I'm sure you're here to hear my amazing ball knowledge. So we're going to start off with Saturday's fixtures and Manchester United versus Everton. Now this is a very big test for the Merseyside team as they travel to Manchester to face a United side which has not been having a great run of results recently. The Ten Hag era has begun. Everton, on the other hand, have had a bit of a better run, picking up some very important points in their quest for Premier League survival, but find themselves out of the relegation zone on goal difference alone. Both teams play very different styles of football, with Manchester United being a very attack-focused side under Ten Hag, while Everton play more defensively in comparison. United are also embroiled in a top 4 battle where 3 teams are just fighting for these last 2 spots, 3rd and 4th, with only 3 points separating these 3 sides. It makes this final run even more intense and very important for each side involved, especially for those European hopes. Everton will be fighting for their own Premier League survival as well, and will hope they can cause an upset at Old Trafford. I'm going to say 3-1. However, I'm going to say 3-1 to United. I think this match will go the same way as many have at Old Trafford this season. Manchester United put some brilliant performances despite dropping points in their last 3 matches prior to win over Brentford. Everton can be a good side, especially defensively, but their form away from home has not been great. Neither has their home form, to be honest. And then we move on to Aston Villa versus Nottingham Forest. Now this is a surging Villa side that are hosting a struggling Nottingham Forest in Birmingham. And I must say, I'm not looking forward to this one. Aston Villa have been brilliant since Emery took charge and have seen themselves surge up the table, rightfully so as well, currently finding themselves in the top half. Nottingham Forest, on the other hand, have not had such a great time, currently finding themselves just above the relegation zone on goal difference alone. Questions were being asked about our manager Steve Cooper, but the board have reaffirmed their backing of him. That's going to do wonders for the squad. I think clearing up any sort of speculation about his future will help the squad focus on what they need to do to survive in the Premier League. So fingers crossed we get a little manager bounce, But as I'm sure we all know, Nottingham Forest awful away from home, and that's only made worse by the quality of this Aston Villa side, who are playing some brilliant football at the moment. Villa's top scorer, Ollie Watkins, has been in great form too, and will no doubt cause Forest a lot of problems. I'm saying 4-0 to Villa. I can only see Villa taking us apart at Villa Park. Forest are in a vital need of points, but just looking at this Villa side in their recent performances, that is very, very unlikely here. I can see it going the same way as Forest matches against West Ham and Tottenham did, with Forest not being able to deal with the pressure of this Villa side. It should be light work for the villains. And then move on to Brentford versus Newcastle United. Now Newcastle are once again in London as they face the Bees at the Brentford Community Stadium. The Geordies are coming off the back of their dominant win over West Ham and will be looking to repeat that against Brentford to further cement their top 4 position. Brentford at home are no slouches either though, with them being unbeaten in 10 matches at home. Both teams are in good form at the moment, with Newcastle looking recovered from their slump earlier in the season. Brentford's form has not been as great as Newcastle's, but they have their formidable home form on their side and we're looking to ensure the Geordies cannot dominate them as happened to their London neighbours. I'm going to say 3-2 to Newcastle. I think Newcastle will just about end the bees here and end that brilliant unbeaten run they've been on. The Magpies have been playing some brilliant football in recent clashes and are currently competing for a top 4 spot. And of the 3 teams, they look very likely to manage it. Brentford are a side full of quality players, but I think the way Newcastle are playing will just be too much for the bees. However, I could easily see this going in Brentford's favour as well. But I'm backing Newcastle in this one. And then move on to Fulham versus West Ham United. Now this is a London derby this week as West Ham travel across London to face the Cottagers. Now this is a weakened Fulham side as they'll be without their star striker Mitrovic. Silva will also be facing a touchline ban during this clash after those cup shenanigans last month. West Ham on the other side have seen an upturn in form recently, with them finding themselves just outside the relegation zone on goal difference, and their form was steadily improving until they hosted Newcastle United, with them conceding 5 in their own backyard. Fulham are a weakened side without their star striker, and while they do have players who can step up, Mitrovic will still be a big miss. Despite the drubbing they sustained earlier in the week, West Ham can still be a formidable side under Moyes. However, they don't seem to have the prowess that took them to Europe last season. I think Moyes might be gone at the end of the season. I'm saying 2-1 to Fulham. Fulham are definitely a weakened side without their star Serbian, and we're missing the firepower he provides. But they do still have goal scorers, but I can see them being a bit less prolific without him. West Ham also have goal scorers within their ranks, but will find it tough to break down Fulham at Craven Cottage. Should be a decent London derby, and then move on to Wolverhampton Wanderers versus Chelsea. Now a struggling Wolves side host a struggling Chelsea side in the West Midlands. Chelsea sacked Potter after their draw with Everton, which saw Chelsea drop into the bottom half of the league, and have just reappointed Frank Lampard as their interim manager, which is a very strange appointment in my opinion. Wolves haven't been great this season, and currently find themselves still in the grasp of the relegation zone, only being a point clear. Chelsea shouldn't face the risk of being relegated, but it's a far cry from recent seasons, and they'll likely miss on European football next season. Unless they pull something brilliant out with Frank Lampard, but I can't see that happening. Wolves' season has not been great, even bringing in a new manager had not fixed their problems and still risk dropping down to the second tier. This is really anyone's clash, as Wolves will be up for it at the Molineux, and this Chelsea side are full of quality which, on paper, should beat this Wolves side. So let's see if Frank can extract that quality. I'm saying 1-1. I think it'll be another draw for both sides. Chelsea looks decent against Liverpool, but could not beat the Reds at Stamford Bridge, while Wolves grabbed a late equaliser against Forest. It'll be a very interesting clash to watch, but I can see the points being shared either way. And then move on to Tottenham Hotspur versus Brighton Hove Albion. A shaky Spurs side hosts a strong Brighton side that look to further secure their Champions League spot. This race for top 4 is really heating up with at least 3 sides in the race, and honestly Brighton are in contention. They could see themselves playing Champions League football next season, which is kinda mental. Brighton are fully in contention for Europe and have the potential to get something from this clash. Tottenham haven't been great in recent clashes and look lacklustre both home and away. Even with Conte leaving, this hasn't changed and shows how deep Spurs issues really go. I'm saying 2-1 to Brighton. I would not be surprised to see Brighton win at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and take all 3 points back to the coast. Tottenham have the quality within their side, but their recent performances leave a lot to be desired. Brighton, on the other hand, are enjoying a brilliant run of form. I think it's 7 away games they're unbeaten in, and will be looking to add to that in London, and I honestly think they will. Then we move on to Leicester City versus Bournemouth. Now this is a huge relegation 6-pointer as these two sides are currently stranded in the relegation zone. Leicester parted company with Brendan Rodgers after their loss to Palace in a bid to stave off relegation, and Bournemouth sacked their manager quite early on in the season, but performances didn't really improve for them, and they currently find themselves in the relegation zone too. Neither team have been playing well as of late, but the Cherries did grab a shock win over top half Fulham last week. I'm saying 2-0 to Leicester though. Looking at the teams on paper, Leicester City have the edge on player quality, with Maddison being the main standout, but Harvey Barnes has been putting in performances in recent times. I don't think Bournemouth have it in them, not only to take the game to Leicester, let alone beat them, and I just think it'll be a really tough match for the Cherries. Whatever the result though, one of these clubs will climb out of the relegation zone, but it would be possible for both sides to escape if they draw and other results go their way. But I just want both teams to lose, to be honest. Can we arrange that? Is that something we can do? And then move on to Southampton versus Manchester City. The struggling Saints host a Manchester City who are looking to keep pace with Arsenal and defend their English title. Southampton find themselves mired at the bottom of the league, needing a special run of form to ensure their survival. Unfortunately for the Saints though, this Manchester side, with or without Haaland, are very dangerous. Now Southampton did gain a shock victory over Manchester City in the EFL Cup, but they are against a much weakened City side, not the calibre of the one that we're facing here. Even without Haaland, Manchester City look very dangerous and arguably play better without him. With Alvarez up front, City look like a much more fluid side than when Haaland is up there, but both players provide something different up front. And with 28 goals, Haaland's lethality speaks for itself. I'm going to say 4-0 to City. even at St Mary's, Southampton will be dominated by this City side. While Southampton have grabbed some very, very shock results this season, they don't really have the quality to take anything from City, especially a City side chasing the title. That's not to say Southampton have no quality, but compared to City, their squad pales in comparison. But that's what happens with oil money. It's not looking good for Southampton though. And then move on to the Sunday fixtures, and we start off with Leeds United versus Crystal Palace. Now this is another huge match for Leeds as they look to further distance themselves from the relegation zone. They host a Palace side that look like they've started to score goals again. Who knew Roux could do it? Palace looked to be sliding into relegation scrap under Vieira, as they didn't look like they could see out games or score goals, but Roy looks to have turned around that ship, with a very emphatic win over Leicester City in his first match in charge. Leeds came from behind to beat Forest, which saw them leap out of the relegation zone, and were now looking to keep themselves from sliding back there. I'm going to say 2-2. Both sides played well in their respective midweek clashes, and both sides will be full of confidence going into this very important match. Both sides are quite evenly matched too. Neither side have been great this season, but Palace have undoubtedly been the better side, and even under Vieira, when they didn't look like scoring, they've always hovered around the mid-table spots, which is quite impressive. Both teams have goal scorers amongst them, so it should make for a very interesting clash, and one I'll definitely be keeping an eye on. And finally, Liverpool versus Arsenal. Now this is a huge clash for Arsenal, especially if they can't afford to drop points this close to the end of the season. Liverpool will also be looking to bring the aim to them, as they want to salvage a European finish to keep themselves in the Champions League for next season. Now this is a very hotly contested spot this season. Loads of teams are vying for some Champions League football, many teams that haven't had it in a while, so it's going to be very interesting to see. Arsenal narrowly beat Liverpool at the Emirates, and we're looking for a repeat of that at Anfield. And on current form, they look primed to do that. Liverpool, on the other hand, have not been enjoying the same success as they had last season, or we aim to finish as high as possible before a big summer rebuild. With the way results have been going this season, the match could go either way. Yes, Liverpool haven't been great this season, but it would be prime Liverpool for them to turn up in this clash and beat Arsenal. However, I'm saying 3-1 to the Gunners. Despite it being the most Liverpool thing to go out here and get a result, I can't see that happening. Arsenal are in great form this season and are putting on some very strong performances to remain top of the league, and rightly so. It'll be an extremely tough clash for Liverpool to get a result against this Arsenal side. Arteta has gone his Arsenal side playing some brilliant football this season, and it'll take something special to beat them, and Liverpool just aren't that special side. So yeah, those have been my Game Week 30 predictions. Hopefully I get more than one right, but I'll probably get 0 right, let's be honest. If you have any predictions for yourself, please leave them in the comments down below. I'd love to see what people are thinking. Please say Forest win. That's all I desire, but against Villa, it's looking very unlikely. Anyway, I've been O2GT. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.